You've been involved in missions ministry for many years. How many years?
About 40.
40 years. And I would imagine your role has changed quite a bit over those 40 years. How has it changed?
Well, I was interested in missions from the time I was 8. An aunt gave me a book on the life of David Livingstone, and I remember thinking then, when I was 8 or 9, that I want to be a missionary doctor and go to Africa and take care of the natives when I grow up. And that was the dream that really kept me going all the way through high school and college. I'm going to be a missionary physician. And along the way, Lois and I met, and then, and she was through her own story, but she was also had been called to mission. So we knew when we got married, we're going to the mission field. We don't know where or how. And then through several other zigs and zags and delays, we finally ended up in Peru in 1970, and worked with Wycliffe Bible translators in their place out in the jungle. And so I was the missionary physician taking care of missionaries, but 80% of my time was taking care of people from the indigenous groups out in the jungle. In an area about as big as the state of California, and there's 52 language groups out there. And I flew all over that, but either flew or went by boat all over that jungle area. I loved it. It was great.
The Hershey Free Church has a ministry partnership in jungle Peru right now, the city of Pucallpa. Is that anywhere close to where you were working?
It's about 10 miles away from where we were.
Okay.
That was the place we did our main shopping, and if we could go out for a night, once or twice a year, that's where we'd go.
But Pucallpa was Dodge City back then.
Yes, it's really changed.
I mean, now paved streets, traffic lights. Then at that time, one street was paved for one block on one side of the street, and that was it. But and there were pigs in the street and so on. It looked like Dodge City. I mean.
So you ministered with Wycliffe Bible translators in Peru, and where to from there?
I came back to Southern California, and one of the things that happened in my last years in Peru was I just burned out because it was working as a doctor 24/7 for about 7 years, and it just wore me out. And so we came back to the U.S. and I worked in public health, and also continued a relationship with the mission, seeing missionaries. And Lois, you were doing training.
I was doing training for Wycliffe during those years. About 1,000 candidates that I lived with for a month each. I mean, each group was a month long, about 1,000 people.
And then as I started recovering from the burnout, and Lois and I were teaching in a master's level program in about 30 different countries. In the summer times we would go to a country for 3 different countries and teach in a master's level program. And as I was sharing the things that I was learning about my burnout and my recovery from it, I found the missionaries were connecting with that, and then come up and talk to me afterwards. Well, you said something in class today, I'd like to talk about it some more. And so that's, out of that, we began to see that our experiences and the difficulties we had faced on the field were helpful to other people. And then the talk came, well, then we should probably have a place where we could go. It would be nice to go to a place where missionaries would be understood, somebody who's been there, gone through it, who could help them along on the journey. And that was really the genesis of Heartstream Resources.
So, Larry, you've had, you mentioned the burnout issue, and so that made you very sensitive to what missionaries go through. I mean, you yourself experienced that. You found other people resonated with your experiences, and that helped shape you or prepare you for this ministry. Lois, is there any experiences that you had that helped move you in that direction as well?
Yes, actually, our desire to start Heartstream is very much based in our own experience, as well as our teaching around the world. And I think my life exemplifies several of the factors that we now recognize are typical with missionaries. One is depression. As a personality type, I'm very prone to depression. So in our early years, I struggled a lot with depression, particularly because of the poverty of the people. You're one little person and there's this huge world of need. So coming to understand God's purpose for me in that place and how I could be of any good when there's so much need, that was one issue. Another issue was my past. From my childhood, I carried a lot of sorrow, which I had never worked through. And typically, that's another problem many missionaries face. Things from our childhood or our growing up years that we think we put away, but they come back under the stress of living overseas. Another issue is that Larry worked and worked and worked and worked. So like, I think many people in ministry, and especially people in overseas ministry, keeping your family in balance with the huge demands of work. In Larry's case, there was no answering machine, no answering service. There was a front door. And whoever came to the front door had a significant need, and that had priority over whatever might be happening in the family. So that was a very big issue of trying to keep a healthy family, keep the balance, deal with depression, deal with old issues. I had a lot of sickness our first term. I used to say to Larry, I'm the kind of missionary who would be dead at 30 if it weren't for modern medicine. I had hepatitis and many other severe physical problems. The amazing thing is that God did keep us going. So we started out, I was down here and Larry was up here, and then over our 13 years we kind of went like this, and I ended up in a great place by the time Larry was in burnout. So then we had to take time out for his sake. But I think what we discovered in all this, Dan, is that God is very faithful. And we knew that he called us, and because he called us, we were very committed to staying through those early years that were very difficult. When it was time to leave, it was a huge struggle because we thought God had called us there for a lifetime. And we had to do a lot of praying and searching in the Word and with the Lord to see what was right at that point. Mm-hmm.
Are you just kind of have a very specialized niche, or is this a widespread issue?
I think these issues are very widespread. If you could interview every missionary, you'd hear at least 2 or 3 of these themes. Now, the details may differ, whether they work in a Muslim country, wherever they work. The details may differ, but the issues are going to be there. We estimate that probably at least 10% of missionaries struggle with these issues or some crisis of faith to the extent that they really need time out and help. If there